The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
And an offseason that's been all about helping Jayden Daniels. The Washington Commanders made a personnel move on Monday.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Wes Welker joining the Washington Commanders. That news coming out on Monday. Every day, or those of you who come through every single day, you probably already are. But if anybody out there is not, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. If you're new to the show, I want to thank you for finding us. Hopefully you like what you see, what you hear, and you come back again soon. Locked On Commanders is a daily podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers to FanDuel, you can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Former NFL wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, receivers coach, Wes Welker is joining the Washington Commanders staff. Now, according to JP Finley of NBC Sports, the position is personnel analyst, so he's not joining as a receivers coach, but he is going to work with both the personnel department and the coaching staff, personnel staff and coaching staff. So he's basically an advisor. It's basically kind of what it looks like it is. He's a smart football guy, a lot of football experience. He has coaching experience, and he's basically going to be a dude that comes in and helps the Washington Commanders win, helps Jayden Daniels thrive and grow from his rookie campaign, and just be an all-around guy that can contribute to the organization, potentially a role that could adapt into something else or could shift another direction, in the future or whatever. But for now, basically, that's kind of where we're at with it. Now, Wes Welker coming in. There were some people who were a little bit surprised by the name, by the move, but he does have connections to Cliff Kingsbury, the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator, and Wes Welker played collegiately together at Texas Tech. I think Nikki Javala of the Washington Post dug up some old tape or broadcast footage of the two that she was sharing. It's very interesting. It's very old tape, so that makes it even more interesting. Of course, Wes also has a connection with general manager Adam Peters and receiver Deebo Samuel as the 49ers receivers coach from 2019 to 2021. That was Wes Welker's, not his first foray into coaching, but kind of his first real big job as an NFL coach, as a receivers coach there in San Francisco. And of course, 2019 is when those San Francisco 49ers drafted Deebo Samuel. They took the receiver out of South Carolina. He quickly, in his rookie season, took on a major role with the team, played outside, played in the slot as well, was injured in 2020, played only 7 games, but then came back in 2021 to have his best season as a pro so far. 1,405 yards receiving, over 1,700 yards of total offense for the 49ers, made the Pro Bowl, was a first-team All-Pro member as well. And, of course, again, Wes Welker was his receivers coach. Deebo Samuel taking to social media after the news was announced, and he's very happy with the move as well. So there's a lot there. Wes Welker did leave the 49ers to go with Mike McDaniel to the Miami Dolphins when McDaniel left from the offensive coordinator in San Francisco to become the head coach in Miami. But unfortunately, Coach Welker was fired following the 2024 NFL season after the Miami Dolphins finished with a passing game that ranked in the 20s while ranking near the top or at the top in both of the two seasons, 2022 and 2023 before that one. Now, Wes Welker was also pass game coordinator there for the Miami Dolphins. So obviously he took a lot of the blame there from the staff or from head coach Mike McDaniel. There's varying thoughts on that, and you can kind of go whatever way you want to with it. I think the Tua Tagovailoa injury certainly played a big role. Tua only played 11 games last year for the Miami Dolphins. And then when he did come back and was healthy again, a lot of people talked about how the Dolphins pass game went from trying to stretch the field and find these deep shots, as a big part of what they do, to basically just turning into a short offense, right? It stunted Tyreek Hill's production. It stunted the Miami Dolphins production. And I think overall it just kind of led to a downward turn for everybody in Miami. So I don't know how much of that I would necessarily place at the feet of Wes Welker, but he definitely is the one who was left looking for a job. And now he's got one, right? This is a big get for me, right? To me, this is a big get. And look, I can't tell you that it's going to lead to X amount of wins added to the season. I can't say it's going to add to X amount of yards added to Jaden Daniels as a quarterback and things like that. There are certain companies and sites out there that have those algorithms to where they think they can figure that kind of stuff out. I'm not one of those people, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Wes Welker has worked as a coach on staffs that had mobile quarterbacks, operated with the intent to get the ball downfield, had heavy slot presence in terms of usage and receivers. And I would say that this Commanders offense, as far as total amount of weapons, has more weapons than any offense that Wes Welker has been a part of. Now, that's not to say that, Tyreek Hill isn't better per se than Terry McLaurin, although that's a conversation that we can have another time if you really want to have it. But, the Dolphins have Terry McLaurin. They've got Jalen Waddle, but they don't have, a lot of other weapons. I know they have some talented players, don't get me wrong. But as far as like top shelf guys go, I think that when you look across the board, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, I still like Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler as a 1-2 duo in the backfield. I know we've talked a lot this year about an early running back being selected first round or second round, depending on how the board goes, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the potential that a guy like Brian Robinson Jr. brings. Just the bottom line is last year it definitely tailed off and didn't go super well. So anyway, back on topic here. Several occasions also last year stick out when I think about the addition of Wes Welker, where Cliff Kingsbury during a press conference was asked about this player, that player, this series, and said, well, that was a David Blau player. Tavita Pritchard really kind of drew that up, or Jaden Daniels called for something, or Terry McLaurin said, hey, we're going to run this play, things like that. Cliff Kingsbury definitely in control of the offense, but a coordinator who's willing to listen to the people around him. His former teammate is coming in. Like, this isn't a stranger right off the street. Like, Wes Welker is going to have the ear of Cliff Kingsbury. So as Wes Welker brings his experience, his knowledge, his experience with Deebo specifically as well, that's going to matter. That's going to absolutely play big in Washington. So look, I don't want to overblow it, right? But I do think this is a really good addition. And I think it's something that Commanders fans, you should get really excited about. Not that I'm hoping it happens soon either, but looking kind of like, second, third ripples from the splash point. It also sets up Cliff kind of nicely, right? Because if and when he takes a head coaching job, whether it's next offseason or the 2027 offseason, like I said, I'm not looking to push him out the door anytime soon. Potentially, he could be grooming Wes Welker to become his offensive coordinator, right? He moves to whatever team that needs a new head coach. Wes Welker comes in as his offensive coordinator. Maybe Cliff gives over play calling duties. Maybe he doesn't. That's a decision he's got to make. Things like that. Or if he decides to take a Brian Johnson or Anthony Lynn with him instead, then you got Wes Welker, Tavita Pritchard, maybe somebody like that who can step up and potentially fill that role at that time. So very good signing, in my opinion. We'll see exactly, how that role develops, and we'll all be having an eye on him during rookie camp and OTAs and training camp and all that stuff to see really where his influence can be felt. But I think just off the cuff, off the jump, seems like a really good addition. And we're going to jump into some mailbag questions here in a minute, but I actually want to finish this segment with one. Insider Nick came through. It's a curious question. Just wondering how much difference there is in a big slot and the type of slot Wes Welker ran. Everyone is in on the Deebo Welker connection, as are we. How about the Welker McCaffrey learning curve? Could Welker be a big help for McCaffrey, or is the style too different? I think it's a great question. And the difference between the two types of slot, the slot that Wes Welker played and the slot that Luke McCaffrey plays, they are pretty different. And I think it's kind of in the name, right? One's a bigger dude, one's a less bigger dude. The less bigger dudes, just like pretty much every other sport, if you don't have the size, you got to have the speed and agility. That's really where Wes Welker made his money. If you have the size, more so like Luke McCaffrey does, and the length and stuff like that, you can be used like that. Even Deebo, when he does play in the slot, which, he usually actually plays more outside than inside, but when he does play in the slot, he's more Wes Welker than Luke McCaffrey is Wes Welker. So there's an obvious connection there. Yak guys who run short, quick routes to get the ball in open space, try to make a guy miss and get upfield, or they can be a hot read for a quarterback facing a blitz. The real difference between big slots and a Welker type of slot for me, and just kind of a surface conversation about the slot position, is the shorter, smaller, quicker slots tend to create space. They find space in zones, or they create space by shaking a man coverage guy, while the big slots tend to actually rely on the play design, and usually the offensive coordinator is trying to pull a second level defender out of a gap to where that receiver can then fill in, and they kind of like box out the defender behind them type of thing, or catch the ball running. So get the defender in conflict, force them to make a decision, and your big slot can just take advantage of that. A guy like Welker, though, don't look at his play style from his NFL career as any type of handcuff. Look at the fact that he just knows football, right? The best coaches in the NFL, even if they played the game, they don't just know what they did and how to teach that, right? Like I look at Tom Brady, who I know for a fact could teach a cornerback how to shade a specific route, given a specific look, context, and tendency, because he knows the game well enough to not just deliver the ball, but also tell you how to stop a guy like him in an offense like his, because he understands those concepts, even though you're never going to see Tom Brady out there running trail technique. So again, Wes Welker joining the Washington Commanders staff, I think it's a great move.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of a high-level NBA matchup. Finding great seats at a great price, though, that has long been a challenge until Game Time. All baseball season long, you can snag great deals on good seats the closer it gets to first pitch. Plus, Game Time shows you your view from your seat before you buy. That way, you won't get stuck behind a column and miss half the game. I can't recommend Game Time enough. They show you the all-in price on each ticket. That way, you know exactly what you're paying for and you don't get hit with surprise fees. You'll even have the peace of mind with Game Time, who have the cancellation protection and even job loss insurance, so I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
The latest takes on the upcoming draft and the Giants' best direction.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast.
I'm really excited to talk about some of these prospects, as well as the Giants, what the Giants might be doing. And Emery, let's start there, shall we? Giants first round pick, number 3 overall. It seems more and more people are getting of the opinion that the Giants probably won't go Shedeur Sanders if he's there. First part of my question is, do you think that would be a mistake? And if not, what do you see the Giants doing at that spot if they keep that spot that potentially makes sense?
I think it would be a mistake, Pat, if Shedeur is there and they don't take him. We live in a world where everyone talks about you got to have a quarterback, you got to need a quarterback, it's a quarterback league, blah, 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 blah. Here's a quarterback that plays exactly like Joe Burrow, that has been referenced as playing like Joe Burrow, not only by me since 2021, throwing that out there, the tweets are there, but also by himself this past summer at Big 12 Media Day, and by Brian Callahan, the head football coach of the Tennessee Titans, who, oh, by the way, coached Joe Burrow. So to pass on that because you feel as though you want to get somewhere else or want to do something else, that's just bizarre. That's just bizarre behavior, and that would be bad drafting because he's worth it. There's a quarterback of the future need for the Giants, and I think they would be wise to take Shedeur Sanders. It would also be dumb if he got to 3, because if you look at Cleveland's depth chart, they are screaming for a quarterback. So if Shedeur is there, that means it's a massive whiff by the Cleveland Browns. But let's say the Browns do the smart thing and the right thing and take Shedeur Sanders and or Cam Ward, whoever's there. The Giants at 3 now. I think the best option is Travis Hunter. And the reason why I think Travis Hunter is the best option is because he helps you solve multiple issues on both sides of the ball. You need another threat to take away some of the pressure from Malik Neighbors on offense. And Travis Hunter is someone that can do exactly that. On defense, you need someone that can take the ball away. Travis Hunter is someone that can definitely do that. And what makes it fascinating about him is the fact that when you look at Travis Hunter on defense, why would you ever throw his way? You are literally throwing to a wide receiver if you're a quarterback. So that means you're taking the receiver that he's covering completely out of the game plan. You're not throwing that way because he can catch it just as much as your receiver can, if not better. And it helps you add more versatility to your defense because why relegate Travis Hunter? Because, again, you could have, let's say Paulson Adebo is healthy and ready to get back to what he was doing with New Orleans before the injury. He's out there. Banks, we know, is out there as a press guy. We know the young corner, Drew Phillips, is a great nickel defender. Where's Travis Hunter going to fit? Put him out there in deep third. Let him just go get the football. You can put him back there as a safety. Just let him roam and take the ball away. On offense, he's your number 3 guy because you can have Slayton, you could have Malik Neighbors, and you throw in Travis Hunter. He's probably already better than the number 3 corner he's going up against. So when people worry about him not being able to play this on both sides of the ball as a pro, I think that's false. He's actually going to get a bit of a break in the NFL because he won't have to play 125 plays like he did in college because he's not going to be your number one receiver. He's not going to be number one corner. He'll be your 2 or 3 on either side of the ball, which means he's probably going to get like 55 snaps in a game, which is significantly a break than what he was doing at Colorado.
Emery, I want to ask you about Abdul Carter, but before I get there, I just want to get one more question about Shedeur Sanders. There had been, his game is not perfect. I think we could both agree about that. That being said, some of the criticisms of his game, do you think they're valid or do you think they're just, exaggerated because it's smoke season?
It's exaggerated because it's smoke season and everyone is not confident in their original take of Shedeur Sanders. Because I'll walk through some of the detractors and what they've said and how is this false or they're just not looking at it the right way. If you're talking, one of the things they quickly throw out there, he drifts in the pocket. Okay, fine, whatever. That's just a bad habit. But we didn't see him do that consistently over the course of his career because if that was the case, he wouldn't have been as productive at 2 different spots for 4 consecutive years. If you look at what he has done the 2 years in Colorado, he has finished college football, FBS, I'm talking about, with the highest completion percentage in college football history, not program history, college football history. So since 1869, this dude who has only played 2 years of FBS ball is atop the list. And so that tells you he's doing enough of a good job to get rid of football. And if you have an issue with him holding the ball long or drifting, how about this? This is what he's going to have the benefit of as soon as he steps foot in the NFL program. They're going to run the ball. They didn't run the football in Colorado, so you won't have him dropping back 40 times a game and being subjected to those hits that he was taking at Colorado. They will run the football at least 17 times, which is a zillion times more than they ran it at Colorado. So he won't have to drop back as much and evade as much pressure because he's trying to make something happen because psychologically, he knows on the other side of the ball, the defense tends to give up a lot of big plays. So there's nothing, wrong with him in terms of taking sacks because he wouldn't have been as productive if it was detrimental to team success. Because speaking of team success, how many late minute need to go get it drives we saw Shedeur Sanders have? I mean, every time you turn into a Colorado game, they're backed up at the 1 yard line, needing to go 99 and get a score, and they go 99 and get a score. How many times we saw him in 2-minute situations excel and put points up on the board, giving his defense a chance to close out a game, which sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. We saw him complete 2 consecutive Hail Marys against Baylor. One was dropped by the receiver, then the second one was caught by a dude that's like 5'9". So everything about Shedeur Sanders' critiques is dripped in their disdain for Coach Prime. And that has allowed people to cloud their judgment about him. Because truth be told, they don't really like Cam Ward either. Because remember, these are the same people that was criticizing Cam Ward for quote unquote not playing in a bowl game when it was clearly that he was only supposed to play for the half. And so if you look at these people's thoughts about Cam Ward in the beginning of the season, they were always talking about Carson Beck, Connor Wegman, Garrett Nussmeier, all of these other quarterbacks, Jackson Dart, they didn't bring up Ward until it was clearly obvious that Ward and Shedeur were the 2 top guys. And then they started to poo-poo on his draft class and they used Cam Ward to hate on Coach Prime because really they don't like Cam Ward either when both are legit starting quarterbacks.
Okay. Now, Emery, I want to ask you another first-round possibility for the Giants, Abdul Carter of Penn State. Now, maybe this is just me, but I have concerns about his medicals. The stress reaction in the foot, the fact that he didn't work out at Penn State's pro day because the shoulder, which he claims is 100%, but hey, we'll give it a couple more weeks. And there's the possibility that he might work out before the draft, but I'm not convinced that's going to happen. What do you think about, what we've seen or what we've heard about his medicals? And are you as concerned that his medicals might cause him to drop down, or is he a viable option at 3 for the Giants?
There's a lot to unpack there that you asked. And one, I'm glad you brought it up because I feel like everyone's talking about everybody else's, every other prospect's process, postseason process. Like, this person didn't do well at the combine. This person didn't do XYZ at the combine. This person didn't do well at his pro day. This person didn't do XYZ at a pro day. When this dude didn't do anything. I mean, and the last time we saw him play football, he was playing through a shoulder injury, albeit admirable, in the college football playoff, and you respect that he went out there not 100% and gave it his all for his football team and his program. Love that. But you wanted him to get healthy. And you thought, okay, well, he'll be fine. He'll get to the combine. He'll be healthy because he had enough time to rest, blah, blah, blah. Then you find out about the stress issue with the foot, and you like, damn, there's something different. Like we even know this was a thing. And so that stopped him from working out. So his postseason process hasn't been the cleanest. And if there's going to be somebody that potentially drops in the draft, and when I say drop, it's going from potentially being number one to, I think, the floor would be the Panthers, who desperately need a pass rusher. That would be the floor for him. But that's a pretty good drop from 1 to 8. I can see that happening. I can see that being a surprise on draft night. But the player is a pretty doggone good player, and he is still a lot more upside left because remember, he was playing off-ball backer up until this past season where they put his hand in the dirt and said, go be a rusher. He did really well and showed you he has the ability to do both because he's such a tremendous athlete. He is able to his football IQ is off the charts. He knows how to destroy game plans and has a great sense of timing, which is it's a skill in and of itself that a lot of great players have, whether it's offense or defense. If you sitting there watching a Penn State game and say, man, they need a big play here defensively, he's the one that ends up making that play at the right time. So I love the player, but the postseason process hasn't been clean, and I can understand if teams have some reservations.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
Glenn talked about how it sounds like he was saying that there's going to be a timeshare arrangement where the Jets are going to split the carries between the three backs there, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. And that would be a change because over the last couple of years, Breece Hall has been the number one back. He's been the clearly defined go-to guy, and Aaron Glenn kind of suggested that the team was going to do more of a timeshare arrangement in the backfield. So Rich Cimini took those comments and he threw out some speculation about what it could mean. I think Cimini's comments were all pretty reasonable. He wondered if it was a mechanism to try and motivate Breece Hall. Maybe get a little fire in Breece Hall. Cimini also speculated, and this is kind of what's caught fire, that if the Jets drafted Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State, at 7, maybe Breece Hall could be on the trade block. Now, I don't think anything Cimini said was really that outrageous. I think, he was raising some hypotheticals, but the internet has really run with this rumor, which was just, it was just kind of throwing a scenario out there. And now I'm seeing all over the internet, rumor insider suggests Jets may trade Breece Hall, which I think if you were reading the article was not what Rich Cimini said. It was, kind of a hypothetical. But I think it is worth discussing because I think we have to ponder all possibilities in the 2025 NFL draft. First, what I would say is that I don't think drafting Ashton Jeanty should impact much what the Jets do with Breece Hall. I think that Breece Hall is an interesting decision the team has to make. As for me, like Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson are no-brainers. You re-sign them this offseason. Breece Hall's a tougher evaluation because he has flashed, certainly. He's shown moments where he's been great, but he has been inconsistent through his career. And he also plays running back, a position that, while there were obviously some really good free agent signings this year, it's a position you usually don't want to pay a lot of money to. So, I think for Breece Hall, there's a dollar amount where he'd make sense for the Jets, dollar amount where he probably would not. But I think in a world where the Jets draft Ashton Jeanty, I don't think that necessarily means you should move on from Breece Hall. I think there'd be a price where Brees Hall would make sense, and then you'd have the 1-2 punch, Genty and Hall. Now, I will say I like Ashton Genty, but I don't like Ashton Genty at 7. I think if you traded down pretty far in the traded down, and I'm not just like 1 or 2 slots, I'm talking a big trade down. There's a point where I would take Genty. I would not draft Genty at 7. And this goes back to something I've been discussing with Tyler Warren. There's something to be said for positional value. I think there are a couple different angles to this. Number one's the financial angle. Part of the benefit of the first round pick is that you're getting a player typically at a steep discount for what it would cost to find a quality starter in the free agent market. That effect goes down at the running back position. Now, the Jets right now pick 7th overall. So the player they draft, regardless of position, if they stay at 7, is going to make just under $7 million a year on a 4-year contract. Well, if the Jets drafted a wide receiver, just under $7 million, that would make them the 40th highest paid wide receiver. Jets draft a tackle. It would be the 42nd highest paid tackle. Running back, it'd only be the 15th highest paid running back. So you're not really getting a discount. You're essentially paying for a league median running back. That's really not a very good deal. Now, if you draft Genty and he's really good, and there's still value there. But if you draft Genty and he's the 10th best running back in the league, well, he's only getting paid like the 15th best running back. You draft a wide receiver and he's the 10th best receiver, well, he's being paid like the 40th. You draft a tackle and he's paid like he's the 10th best tackle. He's the 42nd highest paid tackle. There's not as much excess value. And this goes into, one of the big reasons I think positional value exists in the NFL is there are only so many players who make a huge impact. People say, well, if a running back is as good as advertised, then he'll be an impact player. And that's true. But there just aren't as many impact running backs as there are impact players at positions like wide receiver or tackle. Let's take wide receiver, for example. Last year, 21 wide receivers had 1,000 yards receiving. I think you could say that if you draft a receiver who goes for 1,000 yards consistently, that's worth the 7th overall pick. You could be, and that was the 21st most productive receiver last year. At the running back position, the guy and I know like rushing yards isn't the best way to judge running backs, but it'll put us in the ballpark. The running back with the 21st highest amount of rushing yards was J.K. Dobbins. I don't think J.K. Dobbins is worth the 7th overall pick. J.K. Dobbins is a nice player. He's not worth the 7th overall pick. And this goes back to another concept I've discussed a lot about the tight end position. It can be difficult to judge the difference between good and great. There's an old expression from NASA, during when they had the space shuttle project back when they had the Apollo project that went to the moon. And I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this line, but it's something to the effect of, if you miss by an inch landing on the moon, it's not a big deal. If you miss by an inch on takeoff, you're in big trouble. And that can be applied to positional value in the NFL. If you miss, if you draft a guy thinking he's going to be Justin Jefferson and he's only Garrett Wilson at the wide receiver position, at 7th overall, that's still fine. Garrett Wilson's worth the 7th overall pick, even though he's not a top 10 guy at his position. If you draft a running back thinking he's going to be Saquon Barkley, and he's only J.K. Dobbins, that's a problem, because J.K. Dobbins, while he's a good player, is not worth the 7th overall pick. And the other aspect of this is and I think Genty's going to be really good, but you just should not need to use a top 10 pick to get a running back. I actually went through the list of running backs who've been named to the All-Pro team recently. So either first or second team All-Pro. Last 5 years, only Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs were drafted in the first round. Other guys went in round 2. Derrick Henry was a second-round pick. Jonathan Taylor was a second-round pick. Alvin Kamara was a third-round pick. Whereas at the wide receiver position, in 2024 alone, so I went back 5 years and found only 2 running backs who were All-Pro first or second team. In 2024 alone, there were 3 wide receivers: Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. Now, there are more wide receivers chosen for these all-pro teams than there are running backs, so that factors in. But the point is, you don't need to get an elite running back. You should not have to use a first-round pick. So, look, I'm going to throw it out there. I like Ashton Genty as a player. I don't mind Ashton Genty if there's a big trade down, if we move to the late first round, but I'm not drafting any running back high in the first round. If the Jets hypothetically drafted Genty and he was like a top 3 running back, of course he'd be worth the pick. But there's a lot of risk and there's a lot more upside at other positions. And I would say no matter what happens at the running back position, Breece Hall, I think that even if the Jets drafted a running back, that should not impact the Breece Hall decision. Breece Hall's a player who's worth it for the Jets at one price, not worth it at another.